Hi, Scott Loring from Zexcoil, and we've got Kurt Houff in the studio with us for another one of our artist profiles. Kurt, welcome.
Thanks, Scott. Nice to be here.
And Kurt is not only a Zexcoil endorser, user, artist, but Kurt actually builds a lot of Zexcoils. So you may have a pickup that Kurt made with his very own digits. The same ones that make these wonderful sounds, because as we know, tone is in the fingers and the pickups, but it is largely in the fingers. What do you think about that? That's a good question. What do you think about the statement tone is in the fingers?
I think it's pretty true.
Agree or disagree?
Pretty true.
Okay. On the truth meter?
On the truth meter, yeah, it's pegging.
Mostly true, basically.
I think it's pegging it.
Is it pegging the truth meter all the way, 100%?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, yeah. I mean, my bass player in the band I play with, I was going through a phase where I was trying different amps, and all of a sudden, he said, "Why are you trying different amps? Every time you plug it in, they sound like you."
True.
So, at that point, I said, "Oh, it must be in the hands." So.
Yeah, but there's flavors though, right? I mean, you can't get. Well, you'd sound different. You'd sound different on a humbucker guitar.
Oh yeah, there'd be.
Let's put it that way, because you're a Strat guy. We all know you as a Strat guy. Everybody who knows Kurt is a Strat guy.
Absolutely, I got 3 of them set up virtually identically with the same.
Yep.
Set of pickups.
Kurt is the lead guitarist, most famously the lead guitarist in Montana Wildaxe, which is a local fixture, local legends, really. They say, they throw that term a lot, but, these guys really are. Let's get to some of the stock questions, I guess. Why did you start playing guitar?
Well, originally I wanted to play bass, and it was more difficult to secure a bass guitar, and so I got a guitar when I was about 6. And
that early?
Yeah, it was an acoustic guitar, but I was listening to the Beatles when I was about 4 or 5, and I would McCartney's bass lines were just spectacular. So I'd go, man, I wish I could play that instrument. But the guitar was easier to secure, and then I found Hee Haw and Roy Clark and Buck Owens, and I said, "Oh, guitars."
Picking and Grennan was for you then.
Yeah. Guitars are cool. It's amazing I didn't gravitate towards Telecasters, but I did.
Influences. Who was your biggest influence? Like early. Or in general, and who is your favorite guitarist right now?
biggest influences, probably by virtue of the fact that that's what I heard, would be like the Beatles. So it'd be George.
But you were too young to see the Ed Sullivan Show.
Yeah, correct.
Or to remember it anyway.
Right.
You're a couple of years older than me, I think, right? What were you?
I was 2. You know, I mean, I listened to that, and my mom was a huge country music fan, as well as, you know, she was into popular music, so a lot of Beatles around the house. That comes out in my playing now. But that, you know, I can't put a finger on who I listened to. Listened to a lot of bad country bands locally in Waynesboro, Virginia. Fascinated by the Fender guitars. And if I had to say who my favorite guitar player of all time was, you know as well as I do, it's Jeff Beck.
I mean, groundbreaking.
Oh, yeah.
Inventing a style, really, he was then.
Yeah. Well, he kind of invented a way to play the guitar.
Yeah, much more than, like, you know, I mean, Clapton and Page, you know, you want to compare those guys coming out of the Yardbirds. Beck's the only one who really transformed himself. I mean, Clapton and Page just became kind of more and better at what they were already doing. But Beck just kind of reinvented a way to play the guitar.
I think it was Page who said he just, it's like he's constantly evolving.
Yeah, certainly, yeah. Well, he is. I mean, he's one of those guys that, you know, just keeps getting better. You know, and a lot of guys don't keep getting better. They kind of, they might not get worse, but they're not, like, consciously trying to move the bar like Beck does.
Right. Yeah, I like to think I'm doing that, but I think I'm just getting weirder.
Yeah, or, you know, maybe senile. You know, it's something you already did before. You don't even remember it.
Well, you know, we're kind of age peers, so if I'm getting senile, you're right there.
No, I keep my mind working all the time. I keep it working. Got to exercise the muscle.
Luminosity?
Different things.
All your Strat guys. I dig Clapton. Rory Gallagher was one of my early influences. But yeah, I always gravitated towards Strat guys even before I owned one. You know, there's something about those guitars just talks to me anyway.
It's got more of a voice, I think. You know, I mean, humbucker pickup. It just kind of, you know, puts its own stamp on it a lot more than a single coil. I think single coils allow more of your fingers to come through.
Yeah,
you know.
Plus the positioning on the Strat. I mean, the neck pickup sounds like nothing else. You know, when you play the neck pickup by itself, it just sounds like nothing else. Nice and woody and open.
Especially if it's a Zexcoil.
Yeah, because then that's all you hear is the woody and the open.
What do you like about Zexcoils? I mean, the history is, I've known Kurt. I used to work with Kurt before I started doing this full time, or not, you know, before I broke loose to start doing this. And, you know, I was kind of talking to him about the whole thing as I was being developed. And he was very wary. Very wary. Did not want to mess up his tone. And he was kind of close. He was like, no, I got my tone. And I was like, all right. And then I don't know what happened. But, you know, it might have been good in the long run because by the time you actually did try them, they were better than they were at first, you know.
Honestly, I mean, from the time I was about 12 and I started playing electric guitar seriously, I discovered very early that your tone was what it was all about, right? That's your voice. So, you know,
took me a while.
You sit there, you work at it, you get to somewhere you think you like where you're at, and, you know, you're kind of resistant to change.
Sure.
Until I heard some of the samples as you got further along in development, and it piqued my interest because there you were getting the sound of a Fender Stratocaster without the drawbacks, without the noise. And all of a sudden now, I don't have to worry about quick step on a volume pedal, quick whip the volume knob down between songs or quiet spots in songs. All of a sudden now the guitar can just remain where it needs to be, so I can just begin to play in the softer passages when I want to play.
Is that it? I mean, do you find any kind of, do you think there's any actual benefit?
I think there's some enhanced frequency response.
Yeah, so it's not just noiseless. You get that at home, people? It's not just noiseless. It's actually just a great pickup.
Yeah, correct.
And it's got like kind of a fidelity all its own.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word.
So initially, I noticed there was an additional range on the top end, which is kind of nice. So you're cutting through a mix with a lot less effort and a lot less volume, honestly.
Well, you started with like a vintage 5 legacy set, right?
Correct.
Which is, I mean, I'm not going to go into all the details, but the legacy, what we call vintage and the legacy is actually output-wise, it's really not vintage. I mean, for a lot of reasons, it was the most vintage thing I felt like I was comfortable with at the time in terms of going to lower outputs. But you've since migrated to, the Z vintage hot set kind of output level, which is, quite a bit different. You're talking like a mean kind of 3 Henrys on the vintage hot versus like, 4, a little over 4 on a vintage 5, which is a pretty big jump. I mean, how did you feel about making that kind of transition? And are you more comfortable? Have you ever thought about, I'd like to go back to the high output?
No. And actually, the high output, what I found was that, I found myself dialing it back to get into the wheelhouse of a Strat pickup. It was nice to have the additional output if you needed it, but honestly, clean boost on the pedal board.
So what are you saying? You run your volume knob basically higher on a vintage hot set than you used to, so you were just compensating.
Yeah, I would run maybe
and
5.
You were kind of adjusting to hit your amp the way a vintage output would hit it.
Right, I'd run it maybe like 5, 6 on the vintage hot set. I'd only drop down to about 7 on this set.
Interesting. I mean, do you think there's more? I think there is, but do you perceive kind of more? More high end, kind of a fuller high end on the lower output stuff, because you're not kind of chopping.
You're not chopping it off. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and it's weird, and your sense of tone develops over time, and I'm playing with more top end than I ever have.
Probably because your hearing's going too.
Huh?
Yeah.
That was easy. No, I honestly, I don't think it's
my next trick.
No, I don't think it's necessarily that. It's just I like to hear more high end. I'm playing at much lower volumes.
So you're in a jam band, and I mean you're using a Qtron envelope filter kind of thing. What did you get from Jerry? You play a lot of Dead. What did you get? What did you get from Jerry?
No, that's the funny thing. I auditioned for this band, or what was the beginning of this band, in 1980, 81, somewhere in that ballpark. And at that point in time, I was still trying to divorce myself from my country roots. I'd walk into this jam session, and they drop some charts with some, just the Dead changes, Dead tunes. And they say, oh yeah, just jam over top of this. And as soon as I heard it, and I'd heard a little bit of the Dead, I said, oh, okay, I'm just going to play these country licks that are buried in the back of my head. So, I'm playing...
This is what Jerry was doing.
Well, I was playing bluegrass stuff because I grew up in the mountains of Virginia. And that's exactly what it is. So it's like, it wasn't like I found that, it's like it found me, and it's like, oh, this is a perfect fit for stuff I innately know. Right? So I was never a huge Jerry fan. Although...
And Jerry would probably like that even more.
Possibly. Although
just coming at it from your own place.
When I ultimately began to go see a few Dead shows, I got a chance to catch some of the double shows at the Tower of the Garcia Band, and that's when I fell in love with Jerry, with the Garcia Band, because to me the Garcia Band was Jerry's playground. There was no Bobby, there was no this. Jerry was going to have his way with the song, and then hand out the rest of the solo duties to Merle and whatnot, and it just was a great opportunity to watch a guy do what he does. Well,
why do you still play?
Well, because I love the guitar. I love to play, but why do I still play out? It's because people come to see us and afford me the opportunity to do so.
Sure. Well, and you work through a lot of barriers. I mean, especially you go see Kurt play live, you got to think it hurts to play. Kurt's got a lot of arthritis kind of problems, and it's sometimes it's a struggle just to like fret a note, but you're muscling through it, pulling out the stops. How today? Was it good today? I mean, I didn't hear you were playing.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Actually, the meds they have me on are working right now. The interesting thing about that is...
Stay off the meds, kiddies.
The interesting thing about that is I used to have my Strat set up really, really heavy.
Yep. First time I played one of your guitars, you had like 13s on it. Like
and
cables.
And the trim was pretty much decked. I had it so I could push down on it, but I didn't float it at all. Had off 5 springs on it.
Oh, that's recent floating?
Yeah, as soon as my arthritis kicked in, I scaled down. I went from 13s to 9s, and it was a real challenge learning to play a guitar that was set up that light.
Yeah.
I broke a lot of strings for a while.
Strings like right off the.
Well, most of it was under the right hand, which is why I stopped playing with a pick too. Because now I feel like I don't push the limits of the strings.
13s and 9s, you'd be like, ow!
We call them cheese cutters. But yeah, you know what they do now. Now I can float this thing so I can.
Yeah, well, talk about your bridge mods. If you want, or maybe you don't want to.
Ancient Chinese secret.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't happy with the range of motion and the fact that a 6-screw pivots on 2 axes on the way up and on the way down. So I cut away a portion of the bridge plate and created a knife edge on the back of the screws, which allows me to pretty much dive bomb this thing. so I can take it down to, and then because it's on one axis point, it comes back to in tune.
Do you know eruption?
No. But yeah, so that's just. Fortunately, I didn't do this mod with a Dremel. I took it to a machinist friend of mine in Virginia to help me out with the modification. But if I wouldn't have been able to hook up with him, I would have probably tried to do it with the Dremel.
But yeah, that's way off the body.
Can we get a shot of that?
Maybe. Get a picture of it later, maybe.
Yeah,
Slice it in.
yeah. So yeah, about 5/16 of an inch, something like that.
That's crazy.
Which gives me a full whole step.
Well, you got to really.
On the way up.
So, what advice do you have for other players? People still kind of progressing, or like younger players who want to start picking up some stuff?
Open your ears. You have to be able to hear and be aware of what everybody else is doing.
Exactly.
And fitting yourself into the mix where it's appropriate to be, at the volume level it's appropriate to be. Montana Wildaxe was always a loud band, but we were always easy to mix because I was loud, everybody else was loud, and everybody knew what level to be at to fit into the mix. But being able to hear everybody is really important, and understand where your spot is in the mix. And support the melody or whatever is carrying the melody at that point in time. No, that's the other advice, screw with it, mess with it. Figure out what works for you, what makes you happy and what gets your sound. Don't think you have to sound like somebody else, because you don't.
Yeah. That's, you certainly, I know you're playing immediately when I hear it. You definitely have your own voice that I'm sure people have already come to that conclusion. Anything you want to say, talk about that I haven't asked you?
Well, you didn't ask me to, so I'm going to do it. I'm just going to plug the Zexcoils, because if you want a pickup that doesn't make extra noise, doesn't pick up all that RF and bull crap from the air, but still gets you the tones that you want, these are the pickups to get. These are the things to have. This is what you want in your guitar.
I didn't ask him to say that. I really didn't. He should say that.
Yeah, that's purely volunteered.
Do you have any regrets? I mean, do you feel like you could have done more with it? Should have done more with it? I mean, are you happy with what you've done at this point?
I could have been a contender.
Could have been a contender.
Stella! Honestly, no, I don't really have any regrets, because, my big kick is, I sit at home in my little lab area and work on things, work on different bits and pieces, work on some original compositions, work on rearranging other people's material, and then getting a chance to play out live to people who want to come see you play. It doesn't have to be thousands upon thousands of people. It can be a room with 5 people in it. If they really want to be there and watch you play, it's worth it every time.
Sure. Yeah, you do a lot of small gigs. You do a lot of big gigs. You do a lot of just solo stuff, or a couple guys in the corner, that kind of stuff,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But there's usually at least a handful of people there that came to hear it, like those Nomad shows, real intimate kind of thing, and a couple people on the front row of the bar, they're all like, Kurt!
Yeah, check that out. They're waiting to see one of my rigs blow up or something, probably.
Sure, yeah. Well, see you fall off the wire.
It's happened.
It's because you're putting it out there.
Willing to walk on the edge.
Yeah, just going for it. I mean, you're always going for it.
Well, thanks. I like to think I am.
I need a script. You're always like just off in the hinterlands, wandering around.
Hard left into the ditch.
Sometimes. Well, that's part of the fun, is you're kind of waiting for it. When's it going to fall apart? And it's like, it didn't. Oh, hey, that was nice. Come back around.
Safe.
Ooh, how's he gonna do? Oh, ooh.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Recovering from the train wrecks is the
Yeah.
trick. Because
Yeah, well, you got a lot of experience doing that. I mean, just playing, you know, you guys barely rehearse, right? I mean, how many times have you rehearsed in 20 years?
we rehearse more now than we ever did, and it's because we gig less now than we ever did. We play a show maybe twice, 3 times a year, 4 times a year, something
Yeah, but
like
what
that.
do? You get together and make sure everybody knows the changes. I mean, you're not like
More
working things out, right? You guys just get up there and just
Yeah, we just
Go for it,
Have at it.
basically,
You know,
right?
it's like really the rehearsals are kind of the opportunity to knock the rust off. And I remember when we played a lot, and we would have a couple of weeks off, and then we would end up at our Logan house. We used to play 2 nights in a row at Kelly's Logan house, and Friday night was always, the first gig in for a while, and you'd be knocking the rust off. That first set was usually pretty dicey, and then come set 2, okay, we're
But nobody
comfortable.
was there yet anyway, so it's all right.
Yeah, our crowd was notoriously late. They'd be pre-gaming somewhere and end up, oh shit, oh we better head. About 11 o'clock, everybody rolls in, and we've had an opportunity to get one set under our belt and a couple beers. We're ready to go. But now we take our rehearsal to do that, and typically we're carrying a bigger band into the shows we play now. We'll carry some backup vocalists and occasionally a horn or two, and so we've got to get those guys comfortable with the material and us comfortable with them being up there, because it changes the musical landscape for us as well.
Sure.
Because it's all pretty much off the cuff anyway.